zum Künstlergespräch mit Laurent Chétouane und im weiteren Verlauf auch hoffentlich noch den Tänzern aus der Produktion. Ich begrüße dich ganz herzlich hier in dieser Runde. Ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich, dass Sie noch gekommen sind, geblieben sind, um mit uns zu reden. Ich begrüße hier aber auch, ganz wichtig, einen zentralen Partner des heutigen Abends, Herrn Dr. Pauli, Intendant der Alten Oper Frankfurt, die Veranstaltung heute gemeinsam als Teil des Musikfestes zu Sacre du Printemps 100 Jahre ausgerichtet veranstaltet. Wir haben uns sehr, sehr gefreut, dass das möglich war. Es wird auch diese Kooperation noch weiter fortgesetzt am kommenden Montag und Dienstag, dann mit noch einer weiteren Fassung. Eine haben wir schon hinter uns von Xavier Leroy und heute Abend Sacre du Printemps. Ich hatte einen ganz interessanten Einstieg heute als des Französischen nur sehr mittelmäßig Mächtigen, als ich heute Mittag mit meiner Kollegin mich darüber unterhalten habe, was der Titel eigentlich bedeutet. Und sie sofort, sehr bedauert, heute nicht da sein zu können, aber sofort gesagt hat, der ist in allen Kritiken, die sie gelesen hat, immer, wie sie findet, falsch gelesen worden. Weil, aber sie dann auch als Luxemburgerin sofort gesagt hat, das versteht sie aus dem Deutschen heraus, weil wir immer, wenn wir Sacre du Printemps denken, denken wir aus der deutschen Perspektive das Frühlingsopfer und haben sofort das Opfer im Zentrum. Und aus dem Französischen heraus haben wir erstmal das Heilige im Zentrum und haben jetzt ein Heiliges. Und dann kam aber noch ein ganz wesentlich zweiter Hinweis, dass dieses Wort Sacré auch etwas ist, was man gerne benutzt, wenn es darum geht, etwas oder jemanden zu verdammen. Ja. Also genau das Gegenteil der Heiligsprechung. Und das ist eine Erfahrung, die ich sehr mit dem Beobachten des heutigen Abends verbinde. Und ich mich gefragt habe beim Zusehen, was für dich und aber auch im zweiten Schritt vielleicht für euch Ausgangspunkte sind, wenn es darum geht, so etwas wie dieses 100 Jahre alte Stück auf der einen Seite zu heiligen und auf der anderen Seite aber auch zu verdammen. Was ist ein möglicher, wahrscheinlich von vielen, ein möglicher Ausgangspunkt?
Das reicht, wenn man so
redet?
Ja. Das ist eine Riesenfrage. Also, ich weiß nicht, wie ich... Also schon mit dem Titel, das spielt eigentlich, was du sagtest, also c'est Sacré du Printemps. Et dans Sacré, es gibt auf Französisch dann diese Sacré im Sinne von heilig, Sacré im Sinne auch von sacrifier, von Opfern, und auch Sacré als Redewendung, wenn man sagt auch über jemanden, auch in der Umgangssprache, man sagt, Sacré Laurent, das ist jemand, der vielleicht komische Witze macht oder der was vielleicht ein bisschen Komisches gemacht hat. Und man sagt, ach, Sacré Paul, Sacré Pierre, als etwas Alltägliches auch, oder sagte man bei mir zu Hause. Und ich finde dieses Spiel mit der Opferung von Sacre du Printemps, weil das war die Grundfrage, dass in diesem Stück, dem Umgang, wir wollten das Opfer vermeiden, also innerhalb des Stücks. Das heißt, wie kann eine Gruppe eigentlich sich konstituieren oder um sich herum drehen, ohne dass einer oder eine geopfert wird, was notwendigerweise dazu führte, dass man Sacre du Printemps selbst opfert, wo jemand geopfert wird. Das heißt, beim Vermeiden der Opferung opfern wir die Opferung. Und dadurch war das Stück selbst geopfert, dadurch, dass wir diese Opferung vermieden haben. So wäre und von daher ist ein Spiel die ganze Zeit mit der Musik, also mit dem Stück selbst, mit einer dauerhaften Verschiebung der möglichen Opferung, die eigentlich nicht stattfindet. Dann in der Serie von den Soli ist jedes Mal ein mögliches Opfer, der da auftaucht. Jeder Tänzer muss etwas opfern in dem Solo, vielleicht reden wir darüber später, wenn wir dazu kommen, was passiert eigentlich in diesem Soli. Aber nie wird als derjenige auserwählt, um diese Opferung tanzen. Und das ist so das Spiel im Stück.
Ich möchte noch einen weiteren Gast in unserer Runde vorstellen, Nikolaus Müller-Schöll, auch ein wichtiger Partner im Zusammenhang mit dem Zustandekommen auch des heutigen Abends, nämlich ungefähr zeitgleich mit der Anfrage, ob wir nicht mit der Alten Oper kooperieren wollen, kam Nikolaus Müller-Schöll und sagte, hier die Theaterwissenschaft an der Goethe-Universität in Frankfurt plant eine Konferenz zum Thema Thinking on, off the stage. Und Laurent Chétouane und die Arbeit, die wir heute Abend gesehen haben, spielt eine zentrale Rolle in dieser Konferenz. Und der glücklichste aller glücklichen Zufälle wollte, ist, dass sich jetzt beides so großartig miteinander verbinden ließ. Nun, genau diese Frage, wie wird auf der Bühne gedacht, ja eine Frage ist, die insbesondere dann, wenn wir Menschen dabei zusehen, wie sie quasi einer Bewegungsvorschrift, die scheinbar einem solchen Stück eingeschrieben scheint, folgen, um dann das zu betreiben, was du gerade beschrieben hast, nämlich letztlich den eingeschriebenen Auftrag, der in diesem Stück drinsteckt, eben wiederum zu vermeiden oder zu sabotieren. Das heißt aber eigentlich sozusagen Bewegungen zu finden oder zu erfinden, die es möglich machen, auf der einen Seite dem Auftrag zu folgen und aber ihn gleichzeitig, wie so viele Bewegungen in diesem heutigen Abend, zu einem entscheidenden Zeitpunkt in eine andere Richtung gehen zu lassen. Ja, bitte. Mitreden, alle mitreden. Also weil es ja.
Mathieu Bernard und Kate Central.
Hallo.
Aber das ist ja eine Riesenfrage wieder. Da vielleicht hat Nikolaus sie dann aufgeteilt.
Wir müssen sie ja nicht beantworten.
Nein, aber darum geht es. Ich würde sagen, es ist was eine Grundfrage auch der Präsenz der Tänzer. Was wird da geopfert von denen? Was findet nicht statt und was findet stattdessen? Und es gibt eine Art der Verräumlichung zum Beispiel oder der Art, wie sie mit dem Körper denken im Raum, wo gerade etwas vermieden wird. In der Erwartung, wie normalerweise auch ein Tänzer mit seinem Körper im Raum steht oder ist. Und trotzdem wird etwas getan, aber mit einem Umweg.
Ja, also das Interessante ist ja, dass man einerseits sozusagen die Polemik kennt. Das war sehr verkopft oder sowas. Und andererseits die gönnerhafte Philosophie, die sich über das Theater beugt und wie zum Beispiel gerade kürzlich Alain Badiou ein schönes Buch schreibt, eine Eloge über das Theater, wo er große Banalitäten mit dem höheren Wein der Philosophie versieht. Und dagegen, glaube ich, gibt es etwas, was auf die eine oder andere Weise im Augenblick sehr, sehr viele Leute beschäftigt. Das ist die Frage nach dem, wenn man so will, inhärenten Denken von dem, was da passiert auf der Szene. Das heißt also, davon auszugehen, wenn wir etwas haben, was auf einer Bühne passiert und es passiert da wirklich sozusagen eine Arbeit, dann ist es eine Arbeit, die hat etwas mit einem Denken zu tun, was nicht ein begriffliches Denken ist, aber was nicht anders als das begriffliche Denken auch sozusagen eine Art von Stringenz hat, die etwas zunächst mal damit zu tun hat, dass es einen Bezug gibt zu der Geschichte, die dem vorausgeht, dass es einen Bezug gibt zu dem Rahmen, zu dem Dispositiv, in dem man anfängt. Wenn man jetzt die konkrete Arbeit hier nimmt, finde ich, kann man das sehr gut sich verdeutlichen, wenn man genauer zuschaut, was eigentlich Tänzerinnen und Tänzer in diesem Abend mit dem Raum, mit den Zuschauern und miteinander machen. Und da gibt es, glaube ich, ein gemeinsames Element, meiner Beobachtung nach, das ist, es gibt, glaube ich, keinen Moment, wo die nicht wissen, und zwar nicht sozusagen, wenn es nicht euch weiß und so weiter, sondern sozusagen körperlich wissen, dass sie mit anderen auf der Bühne sind und mit anderen im Raum sind. Am deutlichsten natürlich, wenn die vor uns stehen. Ja? Also wenn die vor uns stehen und uns angucken, dann sind wir da. Da sind wir nicht diese berühmte diderotische Wand, sondern wir sind da und wir werden gesehen, wir werden geradezu peinlichst angeguckt. Das heißt also, Es gibt, wenn man sehr weit vorn sitzt, sozusagen ein Phänomen, das ist bei Matthias Pees, das ist ein bisschen das, was früher bei Kastorf, das war, wenn man angespuckt wird oder in Mitleidenschaft von Kartoffelsalat gezogen wird. Das ist hier die Tatsache, man wird körperlich angeguckt. Ja, das heißt, ein Blick trifft einen und man hat nicht sozusagen diese schöne Ruhe des interessenlosen Betrachters, der sozusagen die Leute vor sich irgendwas machen lassen kann. Und das Gleiche, glaube ich, wenn ich es richtig beobachtet habe, auch von dem, was ich von euch gehört habe, zwischen den Tänzerinnen und Tänzern. Ich meine, ich bin wirklich niemand, der so groß über die Tradition des Tanzes sprechen kann, weil sich viele andere viel besser auskennen als ich, aber ich glaube, es ist eine sehr subjektzentrierte, das heißt, sie ist gebunden an ein bestimmtes neuzeitliches Denken des Menschen und dieser Mensch ist souverän seiner selbst. Das ist sozusagen ein Mensch, der ohne andere Menschen durch die Welt geht. Und eine Kunst, die dadurch geprägt ist, dass sie sozusagen qua Definition vergisst, dass jeder Einzelne mit anderen da ist, sozusagen in der Hinsicht zu verändern, dass jeder andere eine Rolle spielt, der mit da ist. Das heißt also, dass das, was hier als Fremdheit beschrieben wird, etwas ist, was genau damit zu tun hat, ich bin permanent unter Fremden, ich bin auch mit mir selber fremd. Das ist, glaube ich, tatsächlich eine geradezu kartesianische Wende und das hat was mit dem Denken auf der Bühne zu tun.
Also ich kann nur bestätigen, dass mein Eindruck direkt danach war, dass ich selten so einen Tanzkörper gesehen habe. Dann meine ich eben das ganze Ensemble, dass ich wirklich, auch wenn am anderen Ende was geschah, nicht den Zwang hatte, jetzt verpasse ich irgendwas, sondern es war einfach ein Körper.
Vielleicht kann man aber an der Stelle auch fragen, hat es ja ziemlich sicher mit dir angefangen, die Frage, das Projekt und diesem einen Körper? Und dann vor dem Hintergrund, was Nikolaus gerade beschreibt, wie fängt die Verständigung darüber an?
Zwischen den Tänzern?
Ja.
Da können vielleicht die Tänzer am besten dann darüber antworten.
Aber auch, ja, es ist ja auch insofern eine Einladung oder auch ein Auftrag, der auch von dir ausgeht und dann sich fortsetzt, oder wie stellen wir uns das vor?
Ja, also die Gruppe ist entstanden für dieses Stück. Es gibt in diesem Ensemble mehrere, mit denen ich schon gearbeitet habe. Also Mathieu, Joris und Göksche, die ich schon auch gearbeitet. Und ich glaube, das war's. Sigal, mit der ich viel gearbeitet habe, eine Künstlerin, der ich seit Jahren jetzt arbeite, war leider schwanger, dann konnte nicht dabei sein, hat aber mit uns die Hälfte der Proben gemacht und auch mitgetanzt. Das heißt, es gibt eine Art von Wissen, das sich übergibt oder dass die sich gegenseitig so geben. Das heißt, die schon kannten, geben was zu den anderen. Sigal hat mit improvisiert, eine Szene im Abend kommt wirklich von ihr, ist drin geblieben, die anderen haben das gelernt. Und ich glaube, so zuerst eine Art von Wissen aus den Jahren geht. Wiederum, jedes Stück ist wie neu, also das könnte Mathieu vielleicht am besten erklären. Jedes Mal glauben sie, die schon mit mir gearbeitet haben, jetzt wissen wir was ein bisschen mehr als die anderen und merken, dass sie genau vom Null anfangen wieder, was ein bisschen frustrierend ist manchmal, weil sie glauben, einen Vorsprung zu haben, letztendlich gibt es keinen.
Was macht den Vorsprung weg? Wie löst er sich auf?
Yeah, I think that's the very complicated thing with the work with Laurent is that there's no moment where you have it. In sense, in terms of shapes or in terms of action, we're always on the way to the state, and it puts us always in a situation where we have to be fragile and exposed and naked, which is not normally what the performer is trained. So we have a lot of layers where we protect, where we can show what we can do. And here we have to be completely without any mask protection, so that we can really share it together and with you. So that when we think this part of the whole room, not only think with our knowledge. And every piece goes through huge crisis, every piece goes through huge drama, because we are always kind of on the edge of ourselves. And beyond the edge sometimes it's not really easy. But it creates a lot of energy. because in this moment we are really between the foreignty in ourselves, the outside, and that creates a big friction. I think you saw that somehow.
And as my experience from tonight's reception is that your knowledge in de-escalation, in just kind of getting me out of a conflict zone, of kind of calming me down, of kind of refocusing me, is enormous. And so probably kind of related to your experience you make during the work process.
I have something to add on to what you were saying. I think there's another, beyond what Matthew's talking about, there's also, Igor is interested in some capacity in sort of looking at how there can be a technique that to train new people to go into this kind of work. Because I came to the rehearsals and I had no idea what was going on at all. And so there's, you probably saw a lot of sort of linear lines and this almost formal looking movement. And there's something about relearning how the body has two sides and relearning very symmetrical lines and understanding the space in squares and circles. And it's almost mathematical the way it starts to work. And there's something about that that allows you then to enter into these states and get you to these places. So there's a couple of layers that are going on. Because when I first started, a lot of it was, I was taught through these sort of lines. You know, I had to stand like this for a really long time and I didn't understand why. But eventually it starts to make sense. And then there's something.
After a while.
After you stand here long enough, it'll start to, you know, something will happen to you too. No, but there's an energy that starts to go through your body. And so there's different levels that it then can take you these steps. Trying to figure out the steps to get there is an interesting thing because everybody takes different steps to get there and understands it in sort of a different way. It means different words or different cues.
Ich hatte eigentlich die Beobachtung gemacht, dass gewisse Strukturen auf der Bühne auch aufgetreten sind. Zum Beispiel an einer Stelle, dass die ganze Bühne durch ein Quadrat aufgespannt wurde. Also an jeder Ecke der Bühne ein Tänzer, die auch betont durch Stellung der Arme angedeutet haben, dass ein Quadrat gebildet wurde und dann später in der Sequenz nach dem eigentlichen Ende des Sacre des Printemps in seiner Originalfassung diese Gruppierungen, die mir aufgefallen sind, eine einzelne Tänzerin oder Tänzer, zwei Personen zusammen und vier Personen zusammen. Das heißt also die Zweierpotenzreihe. Und die Frage ist eigentlich, ist halt ein Zusammenhang zu Ihrem ursprünglichen Ingenieursstudium?
Also ich habe immer Mathematik sehr geliebt. Also Mathematik habe ich immer sehr geliebt und besonders Geometrie. So ich habe immer eine Anziehung zu Formen gehabt, also den Linien, zu Figuren, auch mathematische Probleme zu lösen. Fand ich immer sehr schön. Aber ich wollte auch immer als Kind tanzen und wurde mir verboten. Und wenn ich jetzt mehr und mehr zum Tanz komme, weiß ich nicht mehr, ob ich doch nicht in der Mathematik den Tanz, den ich mir so wünschte, gefunden hatte, in den Bewegungen, in der Geometrie, oder ob es umgekehrt die Mathematik, die mir diesen Zugang gegeben hat, das weiß ich nicht. Weil wenn ich mich versuche, mich zu erinnern, wie ich fasziniert war von gewissen Kurven, wenn man so in analytischer Mathematik arbeitet, man macht viel Kurven. Und ich war fasziniert von den Bewegungen, diese Kurven. Und jetzt, wenn ich auf der Bühne die Improvisation gewisse Kurven mache, habe ich wieder diese Linien, die ich sehe von dieser mathematischen Zeit. Oder für diese Zeit ist nicht Mathe. So. In Frankreich Ingenieur macht man eigentlich im Grunde genommen nur Mathematik.
I can't find the contemporary element that I find in other pieces of yours where it's really the starting position is sort of a group of people trying to make sense of the situation. And here the looks even, they were very inszeniert. So
the looks, what do you mean?
Nikolaus,
at the gaze.
Yes.
Yes.
this as the case as making apparent that we are looked at. For me, it wanted to make this apparent, but the piece itself was completely autonomous without them.
You mean without you?
Yes.
As a public?
Yes.
About the gaze, I can't say it's insignificant because it's not. There is no moment where I tell them now you look at the people, or I never tell them how to look there. They know they have to face, to expose to the public. That's why I cannot say it's insignificant, and tonight I cannot say it was insignificant either. I think the sacrifice has to do with the form too. So you cannot sacrifice. So I will not say that Laurent sacrificed it. It doesn't show it. Doesn't do it. It's different. Here I see the way they dance with it. So I write. I can think about the past, but I still look at what they do now. And there is a game I like when you described it with the. They call it. They play with it, but they do something else. With it, but you have to dare to take it and to play with it, and not just do something without it. It's not possible. I mean, for me, it's interesting as the let's look, and from this jump somewhere else. So it's a kind of trampoline, the piece, or the Sacre du Printemps. But you have to go in it, and then you go away. And it's in the relation to the music, how they dance on the music, with the music. They are not dancing on the music, they hear it, but they do their own thing. Somebody said in Paris, what I really love as a sentence, it is as if the music comes from another room when they dance. And they would be there and people would say, oh, let's dance on Saturday, it's Saturday, they play the dancing. There is and tonight was very, very nice. The relation between the body and the music was very, very special. Very difficult to get because they have really to hear the music and play with it by being aware of us. And normally when you hear the music and you dance on it, you go more or less in you, and then you can dance on it. And here you have to be completely outside, hear the music, and it's during the rehearsal it was first completely blocking for them. Because it's totally the contrary how normally you dance on music. Sometimes you dance against the music, or you dance that you put the music and the dancers on the premiere together. They don't know about it, and something will happen, or they're completely separated, and it's a hazard, or they mix. But no, you are aware that the music is there, but you dance in a specific way in relation to the music.
But I think there is something very interesting about the question of what is contemporary and what you are doing. And I think if you look closely at your work, there is something, in fact, by all the differences, very similar in terms of the question to what Xavier Leroy is working on in a way, namely the question of singularity. And singularity is something completely different, for example, from saying, well, everybody is special or whatsoever. I mean, as long as you talk like that, you're still in a very normed and in a very normative way, so to speak. So in order to work on that which is singular, there has to be something to the extent of, well, what we talked about, this taking into account where you come from, taking into account where you are at that moment, and I think there is something which, I mean, is very interesting to me also, in comparison to the works that you've done in theater, that, I mean, in theater, it's this thing about you should not only play something, but you should also know that you are somewhere, so the situation where you are in when you are on stage. And so this is kind of always kind of contradictory, always kind of fighting each other, the two situations, the situation that you might represent and the situation that you are in a way. And I think there is something to the extent of that also in that way, how you dance, how you understand your acting on stage, so to speak, which in the end turns the dancer into somebody who has to achieve more than he ever could. So that in one or another way he will show something, and he will show something that is no longer part of what he masters, part of what he is sovereign of. So for example, the question of the faces, it was even stronger at the beginning. I remember that at the premiere in Essen, it was extremely interesting to watch the faces of the dancers. And I afterwards said to Laurent, Laurent, this is extremely interesting. How did you get that? And he said, well, don't tell them. If you tell them, they won't do it any longer. And it's true, there was something really that is no longer to be seen. So in one or another way, it is taken up, it's in a way aufgehoben, as Hegel would say. So, of course, if you do it over and over again, it becomes part of a game. But I think there is still something to the extent of that unforeseen moment of interruption, so to speak, of one or the other calcul, one or the other calculation, which leads to the point where you see a singular body lost on stage, so to speak, but in that very moment where you see this body being lost, you see really something, and you don't see any longer the kind of prepared, normed, planned, sovereign scene, so to speak. And I think this is happening in all the different, I mean, I saw that now several times at several places, and it's always happening in a different way. Today, for example, for me, what I was really struck by is the fact that you have this small room for a choreography which was made, it seems to me, for a much larger room, and which turns it into, I mean, you see it like in a nutshell. So you get the impression everything is much more extreme by the very fact that it has to be on this small space.
It's so much more intensity than picture at any point. So it's really kind of, I never got this kind of distance of creating picture of what I see.
No, that's a big point. It's impossible to have picture. Yeah.
Maybe to answer your question on our side, what is really contemporary for me is that Laurent asks us to really dance with our desires. And this is something very few choreographers have asked me on this depth, which also means that we need to be able to let go of a certain control. That's why we become a bit wild, or because there's something which is beyond our training. It's in our nature of human. So that's tricky, because then there are pictures of you that are coming out which you might not like, but they are much more powerful and honest than what you prepare or what you would like to show from. So we are sometimes the faces comes out because we react on that. We're ourselves. That's theirs. That's what I have to share.
I mean, what it was in Essen with a lot of faces was the fight they had, which is part of the show. And I never told them less faces just for less faces. I told people telling me this in Essen, it will go, because there are some people who loved it and others were very disturbed about it. They said, oh, this open mouth all the time, it's horrible. I heard many times this. Or in the last piece by Tanzin August, very nice show, but the open mouth, no, it has to close. And you believe today that in dance, the question of the open mouth is, but it's not. And you hear this from people who are working on very contemporary dance places there. And I tell them, yes, I don't, it's not disturbing for me. I mean, I'm not saying you open your mouth, but it happens. And I said, when you fight less, it will go away. But it's a process that they go through. And when a fight with something goes away, another one appears. And they did differently with it. Like Nikolaus says, it can never be solved fully. There is no end point. That's why it's a form which for me is interesting to work with, because it has no perfection. It still develops and it grows. Right now what we did with this piece is to look at it. That's why it has another temperature than the version of the premiere. It's because of the two last pieces we did with a few dancers of this creation. They brought back the knowledge of the two last pieces, which influenced the rest. So we talk about it and we rehearse on it, and of course we cannot, in 2 days rehearsal here, open to them all the tools of the last pieces, but some very basic things. So we train with that. So yesterday and today, we trained with these new things we discovered, and it gives a total different direction to the piece. So today, at the beginning, I could see how nervous they are because they don't know how to dance the piece, or they are not sure how to dance the piece with the new knowledge that the others bring in. And that I said, it has to be like this now, because it's the level where we are, how we think with this. It would be very weird for me to ignore what we discovered in the last pieces and to come back to this piece and say, okay, we have to do it again. It's impossible. I wish maybe it would be easier. It would be possible, but it would be much easier than to risk all the time and to not know how you are going to bring to the others this new information in 2 days. But because there is so much trust between them and so much connection that they let them go on the trip. But I had to dance with all of them a bit the last 2 days to bring it in the bodies. And it's amazing, exciting to see how a piece can suddenly take another temperature because of 2, 3 basic information that you distillate and that you trust the dancers. They will then deal with the show of a new way. And I didn't know tonight what the show looks like. And I loved it.
Can I add something to what you said?
Yeah.
I think there's a specificity, sorry, to the word desire that I think is worth talking about, because I think, I don't know, as a dancer in other forms, also the word desire can mean different things. Like it can mean to complete a task, or it can be, it's more of a brain desire, and I think this is a different kind of desire. It's a much it's a body knowledge, but also like improvising or task-based improvising can also be a body knowledge. So it's a different kind of body knowledge. It's something that's like I know when you improvise in a task or improvise with other bodies, you turn on. There's an aspect of your brain that you turn off, and your body knows what to do. But this is different. It's like
it's nice.
It's something that is inside of you. It's not necessarily a knowledge or something. It's a different kind of thing. I don't know how to explain it really. I have a hard time trying to figure out what that is. But it comes from trust. I don't. Yeah.
But I understand what you want to say. Is for me, it's a raw intensity which is beyond the social mind. Beyond the level we are communicating now, it's lower. So Laurent asked us to be down in our belly and even lower in the legs, so that we deal with basic intensities of life, where we can make children or whatever. I mean, it's very powerful energy. So sometimes we get very touched. We are very touched because it involves also the heart. Of course, we use the heart, but we.
But the important point in the terms of desire is the connection to the outside. They are not looking inside what they would like to do alone. They don't move without being related. I mean, the decision, the cause to move, or the origin of the movement comes from the outside all the time.
Like, for example, when we first started working, Laurent kept telling me to show him the space. And I could not for the life of me figure out what this meant, because I was, I was showing him the space through my understanding of the space. And what he meant was, I want your body to be a part of the space. Like, literally a part of the space. Be inside of the space with it. And it took me a while to make that shift, because I was looking at things and understanding what they were, rather than sort of dissolving into them. If that makes sense.
Just want to ask, because you mentioned that one of the dancers mentioned that you're trying to put them in a vulnerable state where they really reveal their masks. And the girl mentioned that you put them very long time in a particular pose, like to feel the linearity or different kind of structures in the body. So after a certain time and after a few performances, they embody a particular form and a particular persona. how do they challenge themselves to be constantly in a place of unpredictability and vulnerability, especially how they communicate? And I see the form as a form. You know, you have created a form through the process. So how can they challenge themselves within the form?
That's all the work actually, and it's part of the form. To understand it as the form has to be recreated. Or not even recreated, it has to be created in the moment there. You cannot do the form from yourself. You can just do it in relation to the outside. And you don't control the outside. And the outside is new every time. The configuration is every time new. If they decide from themselves to be a bit secure what the movement is, and then we will see how we connect with the colleague, that's a catastrophe. They are first to be in relation to the colleague, to the space, to the audience, and then to see how the movement is coming from that. And you will never control the outside. So I mean, to make it very simple now, but it's one of the things. So your relation to the outside makes it that you are automatically dependent on it to know how to do it today, and it will give this color that it's of this perception for them that it's really existing today like this. And even when you repeat something, for example, when you rehearse and you have a scene which is interesting, and you say do it again. So you say no, it's not. Now you just repeat the form.
So what is their relationship to the form of the piece? Because there's a certain form in the piece. The line is on the poster, and this clearly position that I totally recognize without having ever seen the piece.
Yeah,
it looks what as an image, it looks like what I saw.
Yeah.
So I wonder what is the relationship to this within this aspect.
That the form, when you do it, it's new every time. The form is not something that you have and you do it, it has to be retouched.
What do you mean by new?
Can I add
new?
something?
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about is inspiration. Your inspiration is new. The form itself, there are always different states that we go through, and the states have rules in a way because of the way they physically work on your body, because they physically work in the space, and because of the way we're trying to change the space. So we can see the space shift, and it takes us through the dramaturgy of the piece. But what is new is a kind of inspiration in terms of that desire I was talking about, or I was trying to get at, or our relationship to each other, or our trust in each other, and that's what's makes it very alive. You can't plan anything in a way. So yes, we are following. There's a structure that we're following.
How about my curiosity is how do you relate? What is the relationship between these two poles? Let's say these two very opposites. Could be opposite. It doesn't have to be opposite. But what is your state within this? You know, of keeping that structure and trying to always question what is your desire and your, you know.
Isn't there a kind of very practical element?
But I would not say you keep the structure. I would not say you keep the structure. It's
exactly.
The one scene is going to call the next thing. So the structure appears from the scene itself. So depending how today you are going to do this, the next scene appears. It's not this, if you have to go through. It's in it, like this. So it appears from the way you go through today one scene. It doesn't exist as long as you haven't experienced one scene. The next scene does not exist as a structure as long as you did not open one scene.
But this is a structure you have created in a way for not having specifically scenes, but the scenes are being created through the characters within the piece. So something triggers something else to enter into a new scene, let's say. This is what you're saying, no?
Can I add something else? I think it's what Laurent's talking about is it's not about the piece itself. Sorry, the piece itself is not about the movement per se. It's not about what we're doing. It's about something else, and that thing needs to be open, and that's what changes, and that's what carries us. We talk a lot about what do we do if this thing wasn't open, because then we're just not really about the structure carries us, but we have to open something specific in order for the actual piece to take place in a way, and the movement is a part of that, but it's not the thing that's happening that he's talking about.
So I can say something about how we process the movement, maybe you can understand that whenever the movement is happening as, I could say, as a certain product. What we look for is an intensity. And I might share it the same way with this art, 2 evenings, but the difference will be how much I dare to touch the motion that we go through them. And that's where for us the structure might appear, and it's what's flowing through it. And it's an immense difference from days to days, what is fed through our bodies as mediums, as channels.
The structure is an aid. The structure gives us tools in order to try to achieve the thing that we're trying to achieve.
And the tool is not the fuel. Yeah, because we have a lot of
but it's interesting what with the question that people will say. The solo 2 years ago, and the girlfriend of the dancer watched it, and she was looking at the moment for the movement and the structure. And she told after, I realized after 5 minutes that I just look at the movement, I miss completely the piece. I have to look in the space close to the body, outside of the body. And then I saw what he was dealing with. But as long as I was just looking at the movement, I didn't get anything. And I think I'm more interested actually when I open my arms here for what is happening there than for the actual movement of the arm. I will not choreograph with them, the movement has to be like this. I'm not interested in that.
But then we have that question, where is the thing actual?
Between there.
It's good, it's important as a question. It's my question, just kind of following me through the whole piece, constantly asking, where is the thing that is actually happening? If it's not to sacrifice something, to start from the very big thing. So where is it then? And so there's constantly, as I think about the structures and the systems, there's constantly something kind of getting close, where I think, okay, here it is, here they do the line, and even when they start doing it, there's already something kind of not doing the line, not fulfilling the structure I seem to recognize at that moment. And I think that's very much this kind of how this kind of de-escalation works in the same way as it works with the big thing. It works with the idea of system and structure as it is written down as something to follow, and at the same time it's about just kind of how can we dissolve.
Actually, it disappears at the moment when it appears, and that's what I enjoy.
And then you can. And I think if I can just add something, I think that the interaction between choreography and the momentary inspiration that comes, or the opposites, is strongly influenced by what the audience does, or how the audience behaves or does not behave. Because I think, or that's what it felt to me, that opens spaces, and it's about the amount of energy you give or you let them take, and that you draw from them, is something I think influences this the relationship between these two poles.
There's something I have a question about, just to sort of add on top of this, that is curious to me, is why it makes me question ballet a lot, because I think it's interesting that there was a form that was developed a long time ago that looks very much, in a lot of ways, like what we're doing. I mean, not the total ways, but then how dance has developed. I think it's interesting that this goes, in a way, it's not in this contemporary moment in terms of what we call what dance can be, but there's something that's almost like taking the roots of it and restarting. So I think it's curious that there is something symmetrical in the body that we started with in terms of what dance was a long time ago that now you're going back to in order to do something different, which I think is really curious. I don't know, I had to unlearn, still do it sometimes, I didn't understand, why you have to be in this parallel. I think it's really interesting, and I don't know what necessarily that means about dance a long time ago or dance now, but there's something in the body that it does.
I think there was one important one about it, which may link the two aspects of this play together. I mean, what is happening when there is a sacrifice taking place? A community is created, and this community normally is supposedly, and that's what they believe, identical with itself. So it's a community which is constituted by a sacrifice, by sacrificing a part of it, and it's in this way constituted as a closed community. And this, of course, is a very problematic political figure, which is the basic figure of modern politics, one could say. And it's also an inherent figure of the arts. So it's sometimes also that which is beautiful about the arts. It's why people say, well, what basically they did in the Soviet Union was the creation of a total work of art, or what is fascinating about National Socialism is it's turning the state into a work of art, so to speak. So there is something fascinating that you have to understand, or not only understand, that you have to go through one way or another. And then there is, of course, that which is forgotten. I mean, what Bataille would have called the verfemte Teil in German, I don't know the parcours in French. And that is, of course, for example, the body which is never this ideal body, but that has to fulfill, it has to pretend to be this ideal body in order to not appear as body. So as body as being a remainder, the rest is of some sort of the pure and nice and beautiful ballet, for example. And that's why I referred also to Xavier Leroy, because to me, both this work, taking up in a way what some people call the beginning of modern dance, as well as, for example, the work Product of Circumstances, if we take that, for example, are works that are kind of questioning the very claim that there be something like dance as such, ballet as such, so to speak, and as something that is not even questioned because it's technique, it is this what you have to do, or otherwise you're not part of the game. So it's questioning the very core of that game, which is then the body, which is always kind of in one way or another different. And I think it's this kind of body, so a very specific body that you show us.
One second, there's another question.
I wanted to connect to you mentioned it, and I shared this impression that it's a constant process of disappearing. And so I wondered all the time, how did you come to an end? Because it's after a while, I really thought this had to last a good night. Yeah, it's this really constantly figuring out new constellations, and there is never a fixed point. Yeah. It's always, every image you get, so every structure you get is disappearing in the moment you have the idea that it's constituting itself and it's vanishing. And also, well, this would be an interesting thing to the idea of society constituting itself. It's constantly moving and it's constantly changing. So, but if you have to create an evening, so how did you get to the end? How did you get to how even did you get to the beginning?
The beginning, but it's an interesting question. I never knew until now all the dance pieces I did. The end was the start of the next piece. So I had to stop because the actor has to stop a piece. We're not going to make. But it was the end. I found was for me already in my mind. I told that and then said, we have to start with the next piece. And so we knew we can end here. So we construct an end, but it closes a chapter, but it's not the end of the book. It could be another scene after. And here it's the same. The end is actually two pieces after are answering or working from this end. What we call the wind, which is for me a very important element for the pieces after, which appears at the end of the piece here. And I like the idea to put the wind in relation to the earth, when normally in Sacre du Printemps, just to fall down, and here we go up. We don't fall down. There is not this dead body being carried from down up, but the weight of it, we don't have this death. So we put against, once again, because the sacrifice of a basic element of sacre, we don't work with the earth, we work with the air. And this air is for me a very important element in relation to the body, in relation to the space, for the form itself of this constant, eternal movement. And the wind is something that you never catch. The wind is something which comes, suddenly it's there, it could be suddenly very strong or it's very thin. You can't even see it, you feel it. So it works with this pictureless of what they do too. Something threatening too, but it's something very touching at the same time. And the wind is, as a metaphor, the wind as a history. So there's something very, I like a lot this idea of the wind. And the quality of the body is this capacity to be at the same time with somebody there, somebody somewhere else. That they are actually more related to the space than to themselves. So that's why the wind is actually the element which is outside. And they dance and they produce it. What I like in the wind too, you don't know if the dancers produce the wind or if the wind exists. So there is something where it's like the puppet, then you don't know who is active and passive. And the wind, is the wind moving them, or are they the one producing the wind? And that's the quality of dance that I search. That you see the dancers being moved or moving, you cannot decide anymore. Who is moving? Is it him making the movement, or is it because something came? And when you come to this point, and for this you have to come, and it's a technical thing, you have to change your center from where you think in your body. The dancers have to relearn, in the last pieces where they turn a lot and move a lot, they have to relearn how to get the balance. Because normally the way they used to learn the balance, they are falling, they don't change the way they get the balance. And it has to do with this constant movement. Even when they just stand, there is a continuity of the movement, there is no stop. In dance or in ballet, there is all the time the moment where the dancer gathers itself. He needs it. And here, this moment has to disappear. So when they come, and there is a technique behind this, or you come to a point of a continuity, and another point in you is already starting, before one stopped. Because of this, you have a constant flow in the movement. When it's the hard thing for them to learn, is to avoid this stop, which is the moment where they control. You have all the time in the body, a little part of the body which hides. They are going to move here, and the hand is a bit like this because they hide here. And to catch all this moment during the rehearsals, that's the hard part for them. To say, up, you hide your hand, up your feet, up. And to come to a point where everything is in constant. It's an awareness which is everywhere in the body. And to accept that you don't control this. And then you have this continuous flow that you can start to in it, but the time is still going through. You don't feel it. But more or less, you will be very happy if somebody gives me, this choreograph works like this, that he has. No, you all the time see the stop. Because the dancer has to gather again and feel secure. He needs this moment where, and I can do it. And this moment has to disappear.
When I watched it, also
in this form,
that it's a very big loneliness. Because nobody, it's a very, very big loneliness period. But maybe it's...
loneliness for them?
Yeah, for everyone of them. Because they never really can stop, so there is not a point of...
Yeah, but it's loneliness on the perspective maybe on,
yeah, but
on a more subject
see.
That's what I'm just thinking.
When they experience, but they have this experience by the rehearsal, but at a certain time, when they start to go to this place, when they feel it, they have a bit of kind of nostalgia moment or a bit of crisis, and they talk about this. I feel so lonely. And they have to collect the room, they look at each other and they say, oh, I feel so lonely. And then after a while, they suddenly discover it needs another way to share what Mathieu meant with the social perspective. He said we meet on another level. And during the rehearsal, it's very clear when they go to eat and when they come back from eating, or they have to shift to another tension, it's another gaze. They have to look at each other in another way. And then they went through, they see that they are not alone, they are actually feeling extremely from the others.
And here it's already happening. So you're asking for the end, and the continuity is happening. Thank you very much for coming tonight.